Yeah, thanks for having me, Casey. Super excited to be here. It is, I believe, Saturday morning still on the West Coast. So excited to be here live. Dodgers Dogs, part of the Dodgers Daily Network, putting in a show on a Saturday morning, Saturday early afternoon. So hopefully we're able to get some good interaction, a good crowd, especially after the Dodgers had a good win yesterday. Yeah, no, that is, I think that's the mindset that just about every Dodgers fan had yesterday. Gavin Stone on the mound. He's been really good, really solid this season. Gets into a little bit of trouble early in the game, puts a couple of runners on, and then a pitch that I know that he definitely wants back a little bit. Middle slider that Salvador Perez was able to hit 500 plus feet. Absolute bomb. Dodgers are in a hole early. You start to question this team, question what, especially after they lost the last two games against the Rangers, question their ability to come back. But it was some of the unexpected players that were able to turn this game around, able to turn the Dodgers into a winner yesterday. You talk about the 2 home runs from 2 guys, probably that would have been least predicted to have home runs during the game yesterday, and Miguel Rojas and Chris Taylor. Great for Chris Taylor, who had a batted ball up the middle, got into a ground out early in the game that could have been a base hit, hits the home run, Dodgers tie it up, and then eventually win it. It was great to see the bottom of the lineup, some of the guys that Miguel Rojas has been producing offensively, but especially for a guy like Chris Taylor, who it has been a struggle this season, have that big moment, have that big home run, and have a really good win against a starting pitcher for Kansas City, Cole Reagans, who is really, really good. That was great to see. And then you also got to give it up for Gavin Stone, who even in that midst, even when he gave up those 3 runs, that 3-run home run, provided the Dodgers a lot of length and was able to limit the damage following that. I don't necessarily only evaluate guys based off what they do. If they give up a big home run, my question is, how do you respond and how do you answer after that? And I think we've seen the maturity and growth and just the grit that Gavin Stone has. Those are some of my takeaways from the game yesterday.
Well, you hit just about every point right there. So let's dive into the first one. Chris Taylor, the big home run for him. We're also going to talk about Miguel Rojas. We're going to dive into depth this Dodgers offense and then evaluate and analyze Gavin Stone's performance, and not just last night, but on the season. Let's start with Chris Taylor. Really cool because, I had talked to Jack Murphy, got to see him when he first came to Oklahoma City. First of all, let me say this. Chris Taylor, Max Muncy, they came to the Dodgers. They went to AAA Oklahoma City. They reinvented themselves. They had a great run at AAA Oklahoma City. And then guess what they got? They got opportunity, right?
Yeah.
So who am I equating this to? Maybe an Andre Lipsius, anybody down the AAA level. I'm not sure right now that if Chris Taylor and Max Muncy came through the Dodgers organization right now, that anything that they did at the AAA level would have been paid attention to, and they would have gotten the same opportunity to make the same amount of memories that they've made.
Yeah, no, that is, I remember you sending me that text earlier this week about that point, and that is an idea, a concept that I didn't really wrap my head around, didn't really think about a whole lot, because you have a couple of guys that are on this team, established Dodgers, some of those veteran type players that have come up in big time moments, had those big home runs, had those big game winning hits, had those clutch postseason moments, and 2 guys that were key contributors in the 2020 World Series victory. Both of these guys were guys that were abandoned, that the Dodgers helped to reinvent them down at the minor league level, and they got an opportunity with the Dodgers, and ultimately when they got that opportunity, they were able to run and take advantage of that. And I think your point is evident because there's been a lot of question, particularly about some of the younger guys, some of the guys that perhaps have spent just a little bit of time, maybe not a ton of success at the major league level, that are performing incredibly well down at AAA, or some of those guys that are in the Dodgers system that are part of the Dodgers culture. I think you can point to a Chris Taylor and a Max Muncy as guys, as evidence that, hey, these guys can come up and succeed in this system for the Dodgers if they are given the opportunity. So I think that is a really good point that you had. For Chris Taylor, it has been a struggle this season, no doubt about it. It still continues to be a struggle, and there still will be a lot of questions for him. It's going to be an important month for him coming up as we enter mid-June, as we continue through the late July, because there's only a limited amount of roster spots. Hopefully he's able to continue to contribute, to be an important piece for this Dodgers offense and able to turn it around, because I think we remember how good of a, or how solid of a player and how clutch of a player Chris Taylor has been in the past. We just got a little bit of a glimpse of that during the game yesterday.
So I just kind of posed the question, if Chris Taylor and Max Muncy came up to the system right now, like Andre Lipsius is, or these other guys that are performing in AAA, would they have had the same opportunity that they got back in 2017, 2018, whenever they came through the Dodger system then? I'm not sure they would have, and thank God they did get the opportunity they did, because Chris Taylor has made some of the most magical memories of recent history and really in all of history of the Dodgers, and so has Max Muncy. So I just thought that was kind of an interesting idea and topic to cover, that, hey, what if Chris Taylor and Max Muncy came through now? Would they have been given the same opportunities the way that Andre Lipsius and guys like that aren't? So just something to think about there. But Chris Taylor, let's dive into him. He is the, about 10 years ago, the big term in baseball became launch angle. Launch angle, launch angle, launch angle. It's not a swing. It's a measurement off the bat. And it does a lot of really good work for hitters that actually understand how to use it and what it means, right? So launch angle, all it is, it's just the angle that the ball comes off of your bat into the air. So they've quantified it to where anything below about 25% is a ground ball, right? So we're actually below about probably around 15%. So let's say 20 to 40%, somewhere in there, give or take some numbers. You'll get a different number based on different organizations. They'll have their own quantifiers, and then each player will have their own quantifier, because each player will hit a ball, different balls harder. So what everybody wants is a line drive. That's where launch angle becomes very valuable, because then if you look at your different launch angles, you can say, hey, I'm hitting too many ground balls. I have too much top hand. My bottom hand's not working right. Or you can say, hey, I'm hitting too many fly balls based off of my launch angle, which means that my top hand's weak and my bottom hand's too strong. So that tells the hitter the adjustments to make. What happened was, when this first came out, all of these people didn't understand what it meant. Hey, match the plane of the swing with the plane of the pitch, all this. The pitch is coming down, you got to swing up, which was all stuff that wasn't correct, that either it wasn't correct or people didn't understand. And so all of this entire generation bought into this idea that you needed to swing up at the baseball to create the longest window of hitting, which was completely debunked by the fact that hitters started swinging and missing more than ever. I mean, literally, the argument for swinging up, having an upward plane swing, is that the ball's coming down, so to match the plane of the pitch that's coming down, you have to swing up. Well, if that were the case, swing and miss numbers, strikeout numbers would not have multiplied as infinite amount of times as it did. So finally, as more and more data has come into fruition, hitters are going back to realizing that, yeah, you don't actually swing up. The bat angle matches the plane of the pitch. The hands come through flat. It's at the front of the zone where the barrel lifts back up. So I say all of that long context, if you will. Chris Taylor is the model of that, okay? He got caught into the trying to lift the ball, get too many balls up in the air, so he was lifting everything and then swinging and missing. So what he's done is he's gone to letting the ball get back deep. He's gone to a little flatter approach at it, and hopefully that gets him back to where he's been in the past. So that's kind of the process Chris Taylor's gone through. I was listening to Rick Monday talk about that on the radio last night, and I thought that was fascinating.
Yeah, that is really fascinating. All these different new concepts that have revolutionized the game of baseball are with an increase of data. How do you implement? How do you utilize? How do you best utilize the data that you are given and be able to help equip that into what you're doing, help better the approach that you're taking at the play? And I think launch angle is not a bad thing. It can help decipher a lot of different areas, a lot of different batted ball that you can do in order to efficientize the outcome of the performance. For example, line drives, as you mentioned, have a really high batting average when you put the ball in play, close to 700 or so on a line drive. So if you have a perfect hitter, just hit a whole bunch of line drives. Or if you wanting to hit for power, there's been, particularly with guys like Isaac Paredes, they like to pull fly balls. Pull fly balls will allow you to hit for a little bit more power, and that works for certain guys. And there are holes in certain types of swings, holes with certain type of approaches, which we've seen with an increase in power with it. And that has also come with a vast increase in strikeouts. So it's about taking different approaches, especially when you're struggling, especially when you're getting older, as Chris Taylor is, finding the best approach that's going to work for you now as you get into the later parts of your career. And when you are struggling, I think Chris Taylor is part of that process. The question for the Dodgers, the question for Chris Taylor is how much time are they going to give him to be able to figure out that process and also put the best team on the field for October specifically. So if the Dodgers have in mind, we think Chris Taylor is going to figure it out, and he's going to be an important player for us in October, whether that be off the bench, try to come in and hit a home run off the bench, get a clutch hit, or whatever that is. That's going to be a question that the Dodgers are going to have to determine, because they have to put the best roster for October on the field as possible. So Chris Taylor working through these progressions, working to try to prolong and save his career during a midst where he is massively struggling. It's good to see him working on different approaches, different techniques, working with all of the hitting instructors that the Dodgers have to try to fix the problem. There's a lot of things that we do not see that go on behind the scenes that the Dodgers are working on, continuing to work on. And I know Chris Taylor is a huge part of that. And man, if we think we're mad at the way Chris Taylor is hitting, think how mad Chris Taylor is at the way Chris Taylor has been hitting this season, and how much work he has been, and will continue to work on that. This doesn't mean that the Dodgers necessarily have to keep Chris Taylor for their 26-man roster going into the postseason, no matter how he's hitting. These are just some of the behind-the-scene things to think about as we continue to approach, as we continue to go further along during the season.
Absolutely. So I just kind of want to let you in a little bit of behind the scenes. Not behind the scenes from me, just listening to Mo last night, Rick Monday on the broadcast, listening to the whole process that Chris Taylor is going through and all the adjustments he's trying to make. And he's trying to do them at the major league level and with very inconsistent at bats. So it's a lot harder than I think Dodgers fans are giving him credit for. But I will say this, he's incredibly talented. He's one of the most impressive players on any team I've ever seen with my own eyes at AAA Oklahoma City. I said that to Jack Murphy in our interview. I meant it. I will keep saying it. He is a super impressive player, and he's going through all these adjustments. Again, inconsistent at bats at the major league level. He's working his ass off to do whatever it is he has to do to be a productive member of this team. So I'm good with whatever the Dodgers decide to do with Chris Taylor, because I just know how talented he is and the process he's going through. And also, I also know how difficult his job actually is, coming in just every so often and saying, hey, Chris, you don't have an at-bat in 3 games. Go hit that 98-mile-an-hour fastball in the 8th inning. That's a really hard job, right? So I understand that too. So we'll move on from him, but those are kind of some of our early thoughts on Chris Taylor. But, hey, it was a great game last night. If you had Miguel Rojas, Chris Taylor for the win last night with 2 home runs, you need to get your butt in your vehicle right now and drive to Las Vegas, right?
Yeah, that you certainly seem to know something that perhaps that 99% of Dodgers fans, 99% of people did not anticipate was those two guys coming through, not just coming through, but coming through with the power to hitting the home runs.
Yeah.
It was so good to see, and I know it was a great sigh of relief for them. We get excited when the top of the order does stuff, and that very much is true. FreddieFreeman came through with the big hit. That was great to see, something that we didn't mention. They do things quite a bit in our special players, but it is those moments where some of the guys that usually sit on the bench for quite a bit, some of those role players come in every other game or every couple of games or so and come through and help your team win. Those are some of the wins that you feel almost best about because you're getting some key contributions from different guys all up and down your batting order, all up and down your bench. That was so much fun to see.
It absolutely was. Hey, we have a great crowd logging in Austin again, an impromptu Saturday afternoon. You never can tell how these crowds on Saturday are going to go because, man, people have a lot of things to do, right? I got a wedding to go to tonight. I'm super excited about that. Get to go with my bride to watch our neighbors get married tonight. My bride of 25 years. We had a great time last night at the farm. Went and saw our son. Planted some vegetables and flowers and all sorts of stuff. And then me and the two pit bulls, we went fishing at the Big Hole. So we had a good time last night at the farm. So Saturday, lots of stuff going on. So you never know what the crowd's going to be. Already have a great crowd. Sammy Boy Smith, thank you so much for joining. Easy for me to say, right? King Yellow Man, Gregory, Craig Osterberg, One-Eye Dragon, Gregory, our awesome moderator. Thank you so much for joining. Cole, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you may be. Good to see you as well. Roy Estrada, great to see you. So CT3, we just got through talking about him. That's a comment from Sammy Boy Smith. He has a comment about Chris Taylor. So CT3 usually gets hot for a couple of weeks. Yeah, he definitely does. Roy Estrada, I think we are comfortable with saying Gavin Stone is our third starting pitcher along with Yamamoto and Glass now. We need one more starter, and right now internally we don't have the fourth. I just think the Dodgers will choose Walker Buehler in a playoff scenario if Walker Buehler is just pitching okay. I'm still of that ilk.
Yeah, it's a real question what the Dodgers are going to do. So for those of you who don't know, Bobby Miller is going to be coming back, I believe, pitching on Wednesday. Clayton Kershaw, I believe, has a rehab start next Wednesday or so, I believe, in Rancho Cucamonga. It's coming up really soon. Both of those guys are getting healthy. They're coming back. You're getting a lot of veteran-type starting pitchers that are coming back. Based off of the way things have played out throughout the season so far, you have Yamamoto and Glass now as your 1-2. You can kind of move them around back and forth. Both of them pitched really, really well. I think we can anticipate both of them to get playoff starts at the top of the rotation, assuming that everyone on the pitching staff is healthy. Gavin Stone has been incredibly rock solid for this Dodgers team all season long. Last night was included with that. Got in trouble, gave up the 3-run home run to Salvador Perez.
It happens.
He went out. Yes, that happens.
He's good.
That is a pitch that I know Gavin Stone wants back desperately because he's like, yeah, that pitch probably sucked.
Just hung a slider, man. It happens.
Just hung a slider. It happens. Went out there, and the question is, what do you do after that? Yep. He went after that and provided the Dodgers, I believe, 7 innings.
Yep.
And just giving up those 3 runs throughout those 7 innings, providing length after a bullpen game during a stretch where the Dodgers are playing a lot of games. You have to be incredibly impressed if you're in the Dodgers with Gavin Stone, not just with that performance, but performance after performance after performance that he continues to put up. So the question for the Dodgers, and this is something that they are going to have to very seriously consider, and this is assuming that everyone is healthy. Perhaps things fall apart. Perhaps some pitchers get hurt. Not rooting for that in any way, shape, or form. But perhaps not all these guys are healthy. Question becomes, who do you start in a playoff series? Because Gavin Stone right now is earning his way to being in that rotation for a playoff series. And I think Dodgers fans probably would be feeling, especially with the 5 that they have right now, feeling most comfortable with a Gavin Stone in a game 3 type of scenario, assuming Yamamoto and Glasnow start 1 and 2. Gavin Stone has been pitching that well. The Dodgers also have a couple of guys that are coming back. Bobby Miller, who pitched a lot, has shown a lot of signs, great fastball, great pitcher. You also have Clayton Kershaw, who is and has been the face of the franchise for the past decade plus. And you have a Walker Buehler. You have a couple of veterans coming in. I think the easy thing for the Dodgers to do if everything was healthy was to say you have Yamamoto that you invested heavily in, Glasnow, who you traded a huge package for as an ace. Let's put Walker Buehler and Clayton Kershaw into that starting rotation for a playoffs. Gavin Stone has earned this opportunity to this point in the season, is pitching as well as just about anybody, that he's forcing his way into a playoff type of rotation. He has been just that good and that dominant, and I don't want some of the mistakes the Dodgers have made in the past to replicate themselves and miss out on a pitcher that's pitching really well that could use some postseason starting experience like that. And I think gives the Dodgers the best opportunity to win. If the postseason were to start tomorrow, Gavin Stone has to be in your playoff starting rotation.
Yeah. The problem is, I mean, it's a good problem to have. You mentioned it. You have Glasnow, Yamamoto, Buehler. You're getting ready to have Bobby Miller, Clayton Kershaw, and you have James Paxton, then Gavin Stone, and Landon Knack. That's 8 guys that could all be starters that are on your 40-man roster. So that is, I mean, somebody is going to get left out.
Yes.
I mean, math tells you the Dodgers are on a 5-man rotation. 6-man rotation, fine. It's absolutely no different than what they've been doing in terms of rest. It's still a mathematical equation. You only get, so when I keep hearing, it's kind of frustrating because I keep 6-man rotation, 6-man, and I'm like, okay, you still only get 13 pitchers. So, okay, so if 6 of them are starters, now you're eliminating one of your relievers. It's not like you're going to go 6-man rotation and add a 27th man to your roster. If you could do that, great, go 6-man, but still it's math. I mean, there's 13 pitchers, so whether 6 of them are starters or 5 of them are starters, you still only get 13 pitchers. There's still a certain amount of inning loads that all of those 13 pitchers have to cover. So there's 8 starting pitchers available for 5 quasi-6 spots in this system. So at least 2 of these guys are going to get left out. And when I say left out, I don't mean like they're never going to pitch again, but they're not going to be the guy that gets the biggest opportunity to prove themselves in the last half of this season to be one of the guys in the playoffs. 2 of them are going to get left out at a minimum, maybe 3.
Yeah, that is something that is going to happen. Again, not putting aside any sort of injuries that happen. We're assuming that none's going to happen. Obviously, things will happen in the game of baseball. We'll have to wait and see. There's a good chance that things will just work itself out. However, I don't want the Dodgers to automatically go with the veterans, automatically go with the guys that they have felt comfortable with because they've been in the organization for quite a while. I want them to put the best pitcher out there that they do have, the guy who is pitching the best. And right now, Gavin Stone is pitching some of the best baseball that he has in his entire life, going out there, performing really well at the major league level, putting up great numbers, keeping the Dodgers in games, providing length, providing innings. That is something that I want the Dodgers to have, that type of guy in that type of series. And we'll have to wait and see how things turn out, what the Dodgers' plans are, how do they go about trying to keep all of these guys healthy, because as you mentioned, the thought process of going to a 6-man rotation eliminates one of your bullpen arms. And how I would approach this, I would do something very similar to do what they do in the minor leagues. I would have basically a 5-man rotation, but you could potentially stretch it out to 6, but I would have potentially some piggyback games. So you could have go through and order 5 times, except have like a James Paxton, Bobby Miller piggyback start, where the plan is only to pitch those 2 guys to give all of your bullpen arms a day off. There's different approaches, and I know the Dodgers have tried a bunch of things in the minor leagues and might implement some things at the major league level to keep all of these guys in there, keep all of these guys as healthy as they possibly can. Another thing to keep in mind, which I noticed in the comments section, could possibly be some load management for some of these pitchers. I'm not overly worried about that yet for a guy like a Gavin Stone, who last year threw 131, 132-ish innings if you combine both his major league and AAA innings. Currently, he's at 75, so you could see him pitching 150, 160, 170 innings, perhaps a little bit more depending on what the Dodgers need. That is something that potentially you could look at and keep in mind as we go forward with some of these guys, making sure that they're keeping track and trying to keep these guys as healthy as possible. However, if the determining question is who should we start in a postseason series, you got to go with the guy who is pitching the best, as opposed to the guy who you might feel most comfortable with. And I don't care if that's Gavin Stone. I don't care if Clayton Kershaw is going out there and throwing amazing. I would want him to start too.
Absolutely.
This is a question of
merit system, not the country club system.
Yeah,
merit system,
merit
not
system.
the country club system.
That is exactly right. And there has to be a merit type system for this Dodgers team. It can't just be we're just rolling out the same things, this exact same system in the postseason. You got to mix it up, and you got to go with your best possible options. And sometimes your best possible options might not be the guys that you ultimately expect. Gavin Stone has performed incredibly well. Super happy for Gavin.
How about 7 innings pitched, 4 hits, 3 runs, 3 strikeouts, and 2 walks. Giving up just 5 runs in his last 4 outings. That's 24.2 innings. That's pretty darn good. Here's the beautiful thing about Gavin Stone. The reason why he will have, and we've said this all the way back since 2021, where he really, really started turning it on at Great Lakes, why he has a chance to be a long-time, very good major league pitcher with a lot of sustainability. He threw his changeup the most last night. In the past 3 or 4 outings, it's been his 2-seam, it's been his slider. So Gavin Stone reinvents himself every single time he pitches. So last night, if you look, his 4-seam and his slider were getting hammered. I mean, they were getting hit, right? So he adjusts and he adapts. Mark Pryor goes into the lab and starts tinkering around. Okay, well then what does Gavin Stone have tonight that's not getting hammered? Well, it ended up being the 2-seam and the changeup. Whereas some nights it's the 4-seam and the changeup. Other nights it's the cutter and the 2-seam. So Gavin Stone has a big enough pitch mix in a big enough bag to where Mark Pryor can go, ooh, the 4-seam's flat tonight. Ooh, the slider's hanging. We need to quit throwing those pitches, and we need to make a pivot and instead go to the changeup and go to the 2-seam. Gavin Stone has enough in his mix. It's one thing to say you have, oh, I got 6 pitches, right? I hear these junior high kids, they come up and they go, oh, I've got a splitter, and and I'm like, okay. And then you watch them throw a bullpen and like none of them are thrown for a strike, and you're like,
yeah.
Hey, I'll tell you what, if you don't throw strikes, you know how many pitches you have? 0. You have 0 pitches if you don't throw strikes. Gavin Stone not only has a slider, a 4-seam, a 2-seam, a cutter, and all of these pitches, a changeup, he also is able to execute them. So when Mark Pryor is able to pivot and say, hey, we're going to be heavy sinker changeup instead of maybe sinker cutter or 4-seam, whatever, Gavin Stone's able to pivot and continue to execute, which is what he did last night. That's why he will be able to go through lineups multiple times. That's also why when you see him struggle early, he's able to rebound because he's able to pivot to a different part of his arsenal and execute that part of the arsenal. And it's also why he should be able to have success against any type of lineup. That is so impressive for a young hitter. And not to mention his poise and demeanor is through the roof. I could not be more impressed with Gavin Stone.
Oh, I could not be more impressed. This is the exact type of pitcher that we had envisioned as he was coming up through the system. He was out there, he was dominating, he was using his pitch mix to his advantage. And like you had mentioned, it's so incredibly impressive when you don't have all your pitches working. That slider did not work to Salvador Perez. You can adapt, you can change, you can go out there and find a way to still help your ball club, keep them in games. That is a sign of a great pitcher. Gavin Stone is pitching really, really great. Congratulations to Gavin Stone. You just got to be so happy for this kid that has worked so incredibly hard throughout his career. Such a great, humble kid as well. Gavin Stone's going out there and pitching really well.
One-Eyed Dragon, thank you so much for joining. One-Eyed Dragon says Rojas continues to be productive. Where would we be without him? Well, how about Miguel Rojas? How about this? Let me get to where he's at. 2 for 3 last night. He's hitting 280 on the year. OPS 779. Here's the problem with Miguel Rojas. This is not my opinion. This is a fact. He's dealing with nagging injuries. He's getting a little bit older. Okay, so the Dodgers are having to monitor his health and play him at intervals that allows him to stay healthy. The last thing the Dodgers can afford is to play Miguel Rojas too much in June with an 8-game lead, and he comes up gimpy and he doesn't have any at-bats for the middle of July till September. The Dodgers cannot afford for that to happen. So they've got to pace Miguel Rojas while he's dealing with nagging injuries. Again, that's not made up. This is a fact. He has nagging injuries right now that are keeping him out of the everyday lineup that the Dodgers are having to nurse and make sure that they're load managing so he can stay as fresh as he can, which obviously they're doing a great job of because every time he plays, he's producing. So the Dodgers are doing two things with Miguel Rojas that, again, analytics, man. People that are against analytics are people that don't understand them or at least don't understand how they work for each individual. So the Dodgers are able to take all these analytics and go, hey, Miguel Rojas is good against this type of pitcher, these types of pitches, so we're going to play him against that guy. And then also with the types of injuries he has, they're able to sit down and put a plan together. How often should he play? And they have been absolutely 100% spot on for Miguel Rojas. So what I say is keep doing it. Keep putting Miguel Rojas in the exact same role he's been in to get the exact same Miguel Rojas we have been having. Then, whenever it gets to be in the playoffs, the games are stretched out more with TV time and all of that. He gets a couple of more days off. If you feel like he is your best option, he can play shortstop every single game in the playoffs if you need him to. He just can't do it from the middle of June all the way through then and stay healthy and also productive.
Yeah, you got to give it up for Miguel Rojas, who has performed so incredibly well for the Dodgers this season, has been a well above average league hitter during the opportunities that he has, 124 WRC plus on the season. That is great for a hitter off the bench. That is great for a guy that does not strike out a whole lot, which is something different to this lineup that you can have. As you mentioned, he's getting older, and his opportunities to go out there on the field are limited. There's a lot of stuff behind the scenes that we don't see that are going on with Miguel Rojas. I think the role that he is currently in, the Dodgers are maximizing. I think this is the best role for Miguel Rojas to this point because it, one, keeps him healthy, keeps him on the field. I think that is important. I think he is a great leader for this team, great in the clubhouse, provides great offensive production so far this season when he has been on the field. And you can't speak enough about his defense. Would it be amazing if he was to do this every single day, was able to go out on the field, provide great defense, provide above average hitting with his bat? That would be great, and I think that would be the best case scenario. I don't think that is right now a realistic scenario given his age, given his health. And I want this type of player to be available for the Dodgers during the postseason. Correct. I think that is my number one top priority with Miguel Rojas. So keep going with what you're doing for Miguel Rojas. For the Dodgers, I think more data is great, and I think it helps make you make better decisions, especially if you're able to take that data, interpret it, and be able to find the best ways to utilize that. I think the Dodgers do a really good job with that, and I think they're putting Miguel Rojas in the best environment, in the best roles that he can be to succeed, similar to what they did last year, particularly with a guy like Jason Hayward.
Yep.
Put him up against right-handed pitching, and especially if he's almost exclusively against right-handed pitching, that allows him to be the best version of himself. So I think this is with the Dodgers with Miguel Rojas right now. They're allowing him to be the best, healthiest version of himself and giving the Dodgers some insurance, some additional depth off the bench or potentially in the lineup as we get closer and closer to October. I think if the Dodgers decided to play Miguel Rojas every single day, while I think that potentially could be good for the Dodgers during the short run, you might end up regretting it in the long run during the postseason type series if Miguel Rojas, who is getting older, isn't available.
And because he has nagging injuries, you have to look out for the fact, if you're the Dodgers don't ever leave themselves without plan B and plan C.
Yes.
You have to play Mookie Betts every single day at shortstop because if Miguel Rojas does come up injured, which is totally possible, he's dealing with nagging injuries right now, Mookie Betts needs to have the maximum amount of reps at shortstop he possibly can be, because he needs to be as good and as repped as he can be if you decide to make him the shortstop in the playoffs. We do have a question. Will Mookie Betts be the starting shortstop come the playoff time? I'll say this. I keep hearing that it's affecting his offense, and I keep seeing all these stats. Mookie Betts is top 10 in 3 different categories offensively. Mookie Betts is simply one of the best offensive players in 2024 as a shortstop. I don't buy into the shortstop is affecting his offense. That is a made-up narrative based on statistics that don't exist. If you actually evaluate the player that Mookie Betts has been offensively in 2024, he's been he's been top 10 in 3 different categories.
Yeah, he has been a really good player for the Dodgers this season. His statistics are great. I think the real question for Mookie Betts, and the exact same thing, this exact same conversation that we had for Miguel Rojas, although Mookie Betts is younger, you want to do what is best for Mookie Betts. You want to keep him healthy, especially because he's one of your superstar level of players. Do everything possible that you can to make sure that he is on the field healthy, ready to go for the postseason. I think there might be at least a little bit of merit perhaps to some of the fact that over time shortstop might be weighing down just a little bit of his statistical offensive output. April, phenomenal April, had a 214 WRC plus during the month of April, was hitting 368 with an OPS over 1.104. Amazing, hitting for a lot of power too. Production has come down a little bit over time. He put up a 115 WRC plus, still above league average for Mookie Betts during the month of May, 114 in June, still above average, still a really good offensive player. I mean, you take those numbers in a heartbeat for a lot of guys. I think the question is, how do you maximize the production of a Mookie Betts, and how much of wear and tear is shortstop playing on him? That is something that I don't know, that we don't know. That is something that only Mookie Betts and the coaches are going to know, and that is something that they're going to have to determine, because I think we all want the best version of Mookie Betts during the postseason. I think shortstop, especially early on, has reinvigorated his mind. He is obsessed with being the best shortstop in the game of baseball.
You're nailing it on the head right there. You're nailing it right there. He is
heavily invested into shortstop, into being the best player that he possibly can be. And man, you got to give it up for Mookie Betts for dropping everything, for dropping this playing second base to playing shortstop because the team needed him to. He's done every single thing possible for the Dodgers to be able to put the Dodgers in the best position to win. That is what true leadership is, and you got to give it up for Mookie Betts. Question is, how do you get the best version of Mookie Betts during the postseason? Is it the Mookie Betts that is obsessed with the playing of shortstop?
How did he do last year?
What was that?
How did he do last year in the postseason?
It was a pretty short series, and it did not go very well.
How did he do the year before?
Yeah, that is.
What position was he playing?
He was in the outfield. Yeah, so these are really good questions for the Dodgers to be able to figure out. You also don't want something like a defensive mistake, which Mookie Betts is not the perfect defensive shortstop. I don't think there's any question about that. You don't want a defensive mistake to cost you in any type of opportunity, which is why there's been a lot of rumors and a lot of suggestions for the Dodgers to go out and make some type of trade for a shortstop that can be try to help fix some of the issues that the Dodgers are figuring out. I can tell you that right now, all that is in the mind of Mookie Betts is being the best shortstop that he possibly can be and doing everything he can to help this Dodgers win. Ultimately, the Dodgers are going to have to make a decision for Mookie Betts and for this team on how do you make this team as good as possible. Is this team as good as it possibly can be with Mookie Betts playing shortstop, with being obsessed in the game? Or is it better for him to take a step back to where he doesn't get tired like it seemed like he did during the month of September and then leading into October? You don't want the wear and tear of the season to wear down Mookie Betts to where he seems tired again during the postseason. I think that is a real question of concern for Mookie Betts is his drive to be the best defensive shortstop that he possibly can be tiring him down? Is he giving too much out of the tank too early to where he's going to not be as effective as he can be during the postseason? Because we all want this team to be as good as it can be when it matters most.
I'll say it again, though. He was playing right field last year, right?
Mm-hmm.
And how'd the playoffs go? He was playing right field 2 years ago. How'd the playoffs go? Let me explain something as far as the way I see it. And I've been in the coaching world for 30 years, been in baseball my entire life. When you have guys that are supremely talented, we call them thoroughbreds. What happens to what the only thing that really can bring them down is when they get bored. So what you have to do with guys that are thoroughbreds that can really go out even on a major league field and just be that much better than everybody else, you have to give them continual challenges. You have to continually challenge their mind. That way they don't get bored. Right field is boring for Mookie Betts. And also, I can tell you this, when you're just standing there and you're not moving, that wears you down just as much as moving back and forth and that kind of deal. So when you look at Mookie Betts, he's top 10 in 3 different offensive categories. Is it the best for the Dodgers? Well, by doing that, guess what you've created? You've created a monster Miguel Rojas. Miguel Rojas, I promise you, if he was taking these same innings at shortstop with Mookie Betts, would be not hitting anywhere as close to what he's hitting right now. And so it has absolutely been the best situation for the Dodgers. Plus, it's given them the runway they need to evaluate Gavin Lux, whichever way they decide to go with that. So when the rubber hits the road, I think you have either 2 choices. I think you have 3 choices. I think you give Mookie Betts as many innings as you can at shortstop to determine whether he is your shortstop for the postseason. I think you go trade and you put Mookie Betts at second base, or I think you play Mookie Betts at shortstop the entire season. And then not maybe the entire season, but towards the end, then you move Miguel Rojas back over where you have a window where he doesn't wear down, where he's not going to get injured. Then you make Miguel Rojas your everyday shortstop during the playoffs. But it can't be Miguel Rojas right now as the everyday guy. So I think those are your 3 choices from there. Mookie Betts, he's challenged. I think he has responded to that challenge. Like I said, not everything is perfect, and I know that pisses Mookie Betts off as much or more than it does everybody else. And so when you look at the Dodgers offense too, okay, Dodgers offense, first in walks with 273. The Dodgers are first in on-base percentage at 336. The Dodgers are first in OPS at 774. They're second in doubles at 131. They're third in home runs, third in slugging, third in RBIs, third in hits, and third in batting average. So they're hitting for a high batting average. They're hitting a ton of home runs. They're hitting a ton of doubles. They're walking a ton. They're doing all of this, and all I keep hearing is that the Dodgers need to get fixed. Sometimes it confuses me.
Yeah, and it can be frustrating, especially when you watch times, when you see all of these numbers, and then when it comes up in clutch type of situations, the Dodgers don't always come through. And there certainly have been some struggles, particularly with runners in scoring position for this team. I think overall, with the offensive output, they have a couple of superstars on their team that are helping to elevate, that are helping to grow, that are helping to make this offense really good, as you had mentioned, towards the top, if not at the very top of the league in many offensive categories. It is about how do you make this team as airtight as you possibly can be and avoid some of these small mistakes, which the small mistakes during the postseason can be elevated to massive mistakes that end up sending you home. I think that is what every single Dodgers fan, that is what every single person that is pulling for this team to go ahead and go far during the postseason, for these fans that are desperate for a parade, desperate for a World Series championship, want to make sure this team is as good as possible. So I think all of these different questions, if approached from the correct mindset with the correct attitude, are very good questions and something we should keep in mind.
Agree. And great conversation. And let me also ask you this. What's been the biggest series the Dodgers have played in the last month or two?
In the last month or two, the biggest series probably was the one in New York.
How'd it go?
Dodgers won.
Yeah. So you see, whenever the Dodgers felt like they needed to rise to the occasion, they did. Because it's been a grindy part of the season. I understand the records. We have a comment about and I totally agree with Sammy Boy Smith. We're one game under 500 since the Max Muncy injury. And the Dodgers definitely miss Max Muncy.
Yep.
But I will also, there's no doubt. And that's me saying that, right? Okay. Yeah. So, and I'm not big on the boomer bust type of offensive player. That's nothing against Max Muncy. That's just not my style. I just think it leads to 15-run games followed by 0-2 the next two nights afterwards. And now you've outscored your opponent by a score of 18-4, and you're 1-2 in the series. I think boomer bust can lead to that type of situation. A lot of uncertainty. You can't deny the fact that the Dodgers absolutely have missed Max Muncy, but I think it is a perfect storm because this has been a really, really, really grindy part of the season, of which I've been able to ignore the fact that they're under 500 like in their last 20 games, for the simple fact that it's been very grindy. But yet, whenever their attention got had at the New York series, they rose to the occasion, and we saw the real Dodgers in that series. Whenever like, oh, these are the Yankees, man, let's get going, right?
Yeah, that was great to see during that series in New York, when the series seemed like the biggest thing in baseball, because you have two of the best teams in the game of baseball, two of the biggest markets in the game of baseball, clashing head to head. Dodgers were able to take advantage. I think the Dodgers fans, because of the past couple of postseasons, have some questions as far as will that team be able to do that, not just during the regular season, but during the postseason as well. So they're looking for any sort of signs to where things might not work out the way, or might be a repeat of what we've seen during past seasons. So great conversations to have, but I think the Dodgers have shown an ability at times during the season, during some of the big series, the big moments, particularly that series against New York, to show up when the lights are brightest, particularly guys like a Teoscar Hernandez, who the Dodgers brought in, showed up during the big time moments. You're looking for those elevated performances for the Dodgers as we continue to go throughout the season during those big moments, because the postseason is going to be all big moments.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And it's going to be spread out, so you're going to be seeing the other team's best pitching at all times. That's the problem with the theory of the three true outcomes, where walks are a big part of it, is that in the playoffs, you're not facing down staff. And down staff usually is where you're going to draw your walks, like on a rogue Tuesday night where the other team just is out of pitching, something like that. So you're only going to see the other team's best relievers, the other team's best starters. And so the idea of the walk is greatly reduced in a playoff scenario. So if that's a third of your equation of scoring runs, that really eliminates a big part of your offense in the playoffs. That's why I'm more of a bat-to-ball skill guy for a playoff scenario versus a 3 true outcome guy.
Yeah, that's actually a really intriguing conversation. I'd love to do a little bit more research as far as the amount of walks, the prevalence of walks during the postseason type of series, because you're getting a lot of guys with great stuff. You're putting the best players in the game of baseball against each other, and they're going to be battles. The pitchers don't want to give in to the hitters, but they also know how to use different pitch mix to be able to throw strikes and are not going to want to walk a whole lot of guys. I think walks are still useful. Walks can be helpful during that. I think batted ball skills can provide potentially a little bit more consistency to your offense during short series. But I still think some of those guys that walk, those guys that hit for power, maybe not so much strikeouts, not a huge fan of strikeouts, are good for postseason type series. And as I think has been alluded to during past postseason, power also does play a huge role in the postseason because teams that hit for power usually win.
Yeah. Cole, if the Dodgers, the question is, though, when you don't hit for power, can you win too?
That is a good question.
I mean, yes, we know that if you go out and hit 4 home runs, you're going to win a game. That might happen twice in the playoffs. What happens to all the other playoff games, I think, is the question as far as how far you go. Cole, like Oklahoma State, they played Florida and hit 5 home runs in the winner's bracket game, and obviously they beat the Caglione, the number one. He's going to be the first pick in the draft. The big old lefty from Florida who was bumping 98-99 that night. And Oklahoma State hit 2 home runs in the first inning, hit 5 total in the game, and won the game. Hit no home run. I think he hit like one more home run the next 2 games. So you're going to win the games. You hit the home runs. My question is, what if you're not hitting them? I mean, because you're not going to – how do you win then? What if the other team's not walking you and you're not hitting – now how do you win? That's my question there. Hey, we have a good question here from Cole. What a great lobby we have on a Saturday afternoon talking Dodgers baseball. You Dodgers dogs are the best. Cole, if the Dodgers are considering help at short, they should look at Lindor. Get Cohen to pay for most of his remaining salary. What do you think about that, Austin?
Oh, I don't know if Cole is dreaming or not. That would be a great scenario for the Dodgers. Obviously, and I say that kind of jokingly just because, I mean, love to have fun, Dodgers dogs. Francisco Lindor, great player, and especially if you're looking for the Dodgers, who have a bunch of superstars, you should look for an additional superstar. And with the New York Mets, they have struggled a little bit during this season, and they could be an opportunity for them to be a trade partner. I don't necessarily know if the New York Mets want to give up on a talent like a Francisco Lindor, and especially with Steve Cohen being able to pay down a lot of the salary. I just don't see that as a realistic scenario. If it was, that would be great, and I think that would solve some of the Dodgers' issues. He's a great, phenomenal player for the New York Mets, and I just don't know if that is even a remote possibility for the Dodgers right now. Huge contract, I think, is one of the faces of the New York Mets, and I think will continue to be for them going forward. I think a lot of teams know that shortstop is a highly coveted position, and when you have a good shortstop locked up to a long-term deal where you have heavy commitment to them, it can be very difficult to give that player up through some type of trade. So perhaps it would be wise, you could say, for the New York Mets to trade Francisco Lindor, especially if they don't have the window of contention or they might be looking for a retool. Perhaps you don't want to keep Francisco Lindor as his aging seasons. But I don't think the New York Mets are likely to go down that path right now. So I would say probably not, although he is a superstar level player. That would be a great addition to the Dodgers if that possibility does arise.
If you can get a superstar, you give away whatever prospects you have to. End of discussion. I think probably the two closest – I think the two guys I think would be closest to untouchable – in the Dodger system for me right now would be Dalton Rushing and Edgardo Enriquez. And I know you're going to say, well, hey, the Dodgers just signed Will Smith. I get it. I understand that. Dalton Rushing's too good. And
Dalton
not
Rushing's
just the hit tool. Say it again?
I said Dalton Rushing's a dog.
Oh, he's a dog, man. I mean, he's just he's too fiery competitive. He's too much of a leader. He keeps his pitchers too locked in. He hits too well. He plays defense too well. He's too much of a dog, man. And Edgardo Enriquez, I mean, he's already flipped three levels, and it's not even halfway through June yet.
Yeah, if you do not know the name Edgardo Henriquez, because I don't believe is on any sort of top 30 list at this moment. One, that's going to change because he is unbelievable.
He needs to be at 1 or 2.
Also, he's rising. He is on an absolutely historic rise through this Dodger system. Was in Rancho to start the season, moved up to Great Lakes. I saw him for maybe 3 or 4 weeks before he got elevated to Tulsa.
I got him in Tulsa now, baby.
If this trek continues, man, you could see him with the Dodgers very soon. It is 102 miles per hour with a 92 mile per hour slider away pitch from some of the right-handed hitters. It is electric, dominant stuff, and the Dodgers got a special player that's going to be a force to be reckoned with. So those are two phenomenal players within this Dodgers system that are close to untouchables. But as you mentioned, Dodgers are going to do whatever they can to try to win a World Series in 2024, while also keeping in mind the big picture of things, because I think they also want to have some of this sustained success. And I think they know, and we've seen teams that are really good that have gone all in for certain teams, didn't work out, and then they struggled for quite a long time. I don't think that's going to be, nor do I think that's a realistic case for the Dodgers. However, that is something that I think is at the back of the mind for the Dodgers. I think they're still going to do whatever they can to try to put the best team forward in 2024 and go after some really good players.
There is no such thing as untouchable. If the right player comes along at the right position, that the Dodgers feel like if we plug this guy in, we are airtight, and I mean, almost nothing can happen to keep us from winning 3 World Series. You know, I mean, like when Tyler Glasnow agreed to the 4-year contract for him, okay, it didn't matter who they were giving up. Tyler Glasnow was going to be a Dodger at that point. It was a position of need, a starter, and it was a guy that was absolutely elite. Whatever the Rays needed at that point, you ship off, because Tyler Glasnow is worth that. So when you say untouchable, nobody is untouchable. Some prospects are more untouchable than others. And whenever I think of Dalton Rushing, I always think about in 1983. Were you born in 1983, Austin?
I was not even close to being born in 1983.
Okay.
I wasn't even
in the 1983 draft, the Trailblazers had the number 1 pick, and they called Bobby Knight. And they asked Bobby Knight about this young guard out of North Carolina. And they said, hey, Bobby, what do you think about this guard named Michael Jordan? And Bobby Knight said, what do you mean, take him? And the Trailblazers said, well, we need a post player. And they said, and Bobby Knight said, well, then play him in the post. All I can tell you is take Michael Jordan and figure out where to play him next. Well, guess what? The Trailblazers took Sam Bowie. Michael Jordan went to the Chicago Bulls and won 6 world championships because the Trailblazers felt like they needed a post player. Now, obviously, Dalton Rushing, I'm not going to compare to Michael Jordan.
I just want to say this for those of you who might clip this show out of context. Dalton Rushing is not Michael Jordan.
Yeah.
Just want to make that absolutely 100% clear from us at Dodgers Dogs. Dalton Rushing is not Michael Jordan. Continue.
So I say that to say, the Dodgers fans will go, where are you going to play him? I don't care. Dalton Rushing's good enough where you keep him and you figure out where he fits in as he gets up to the major league level. He is that good as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, you got to find a way to play Dalton Rushing. He's a special type of player, and if you get to see him, get to see his process, get to see his work ethic, and just see just his ability, the Dodgers took a really good player. He is a special type of talent that the Dodgers have. They've got to be incredibly grateful to have him be part of this system. That being said, Dodgers got to do what they can to put themselves in the best position to win. If Dalton Rushing stays around on this team past this trade deadline, I would hope they would try to be a little bit creative and find different ways to thinking about the future for the Dodgers, get them different opportunities, whether that be provide them additional positional versatility at third base or second base, even if it's just a couple of times I think that would create more opportunities for Dalton Rushing going forward. And this also idea of no prospect is untouchable doesn't mean you just go out and trade every single prospect for one trade deadline. It means being smart, calculated, and also making the correct decisions for that, but being unafraid to move on from some of your guys if you believe the guy that you're going to get is the best player that you can get and is going to fix the exact holes that you need for your club. Exactly. You don't have to trade all of these guys. You don't have to be overly aggressive. Trade all of the farm so you can win in 2024. Be selective and be smart about your approach, and also be unafraid to do the things that you need to do to win. Get the correct player, and then we'll see what happens.
Yeah. We have a question here. Showtime LA. Casey, seems like DePaul is struggling a bit. Thoughts? My thoughts on that is don't be a slave to top 30 prospects. Ryan Ward, Drew Avens, Jordan Leisure, Nick Robertson, all these guys. Ryan Noda, Jose Hernandez, who came back to the Dodgers, Gus Var. I mean, all these guys that have been really, really good players. You know, they're not on these the top 30 prospects are put together by people that look at size and measurables and maybe contract size, how much somebody signed for. But the Dodgers, I promise you, a guy like Andre Lipsius is really freaking good, okay? And the Dodgers went out and found it. Ryan Ward is really, really, really good. Austin Beck is a really, really good player. So prospects, top 30 prospects lists are good because it get any coverage for any of these guys we enjoy, but also at the same time, it's frustrating for me because for the casual fan, they get caught up on all the big names. Meanwhile, the other guys like Austin Beck are actually the better players and playing better. And I think that if you look at the statistics and the major league rosters, that would prove up and down each roster. So my comment or my answer to that about Josue De Paula would be don't get caught up in top 30 prospects. The Dodgers have a lot of really good outfield prospects in their system. Norm Lee, the one pitcher.
I was just going to say also, don't give up on Josue De Paula quite yet. Struggling a little bit to start the month of June. Still a really good prospect. Still a really good player. I still believe in the talent that Josue De Paula has. That being said, there's a lot of talented guys in this system. So appreciate some of the guys who are succeeding, doing well, and Josue De Paula, who still is putting up close to a 120 WRC plus on the season, still having a successful season. Might not be as historic of a rise Josue De Paula. This process for minor league players for player development is not linear and might not go exactly the direction that you think it's going to go. So hard, so predictable, so unpredictable, I should say, for a lot of these guys. Josue De Paula has all the tools to be a special player. I look forward to seeing him continue to progress in this Dodger system.
Baseball is a humbling game. Either you are humble or you're getting ready to be humbled. There's no doubt about that. Normally, the one pitcher Miller could replace in the rotation is Buehler. I don't see that happening. I think the Dodgers are going to give Walker Buehler every bit of run that he possibly needs to become the Walker Buehler that we've seen in the past. Roy Estrada, Casey Austin, should the Dodgers trade for Crochet to give us a left-handed starter? I understand the sentiment. I think with the modern-day sinkers and the cutters and this and that, I think hey, we need a lefty. I think that's a thing of the past. I don't think the Dodgers need to get a guy based on the arm, because I think the Arsenals are ambidextrous nowadays.
Yeah, so this was a good question. This is a question that I got in the comment section from Justin Lamas, I believe, asked about a couple of really talented left-handed pitchers. So there's a couple of things that I'm keeping in mind. One, Garrett Crochet, phenomenal player, would be an absolute home run of a guy to get for any type of organization. Has experience this year, starting pitcher, first time for him, has come out of the bullpen, dominate electric stuff out of the left side. Where some of my concerns are for the Dodgers and going out and acquiring him, which I try to point out a lot of the concerns because I want the Dodgers to get some of the correct players in these types of trades. There's two things that I really have in mind for Garrett Crochet. One, do the Dodgers have some type of role for him for the starting rotation? Perhaps not. They have a lot of guys that you can utilize in the starting rotation. Perhaps you could say that Garrett Crochet makes you marginally better for some of these guys, or makes you a little bit, even if you say significantly better at the starting rotation, or you can utilize him in a bullpen type piece. That would be great to have. He's got a couple more years under club control. He's going to be extremely expensive because so many teams are interested in this type of player. The biggest concern that I have, though, for Garrett Crochet, and we talked about this earlier with load management, this is Garrett Crochet's first year as a starting pitcher. Last season, 2023, coming back from injury, missed all of 2022. Last year, only pitched 12 2/3 innings. This year, he already has 82 2/3 innings out of the starting rotation. For the Dodgers, they are very conscious with their pitchers as far as load management. For a guy that hasn't pitched at the major league level more than 13 innings the past 2 years, to go to 82 2/3 innings, and then to expect him to continue to be a force in this rotation, to continue to be a force and stay healthy, that could be some very real concern for the Dodgers, just looking at the way that they approach starting pitching. That would be my biggest concern with a Garrett Crochet. Not that he isn't a phenomenal talent, not that he isn't one of the best left-handed starting pitchers or just starting pitchers in general in the game of baseball right now. It is load management, and will this guy be healthy enough, and will the Dodgers be able to utilize his innings enough for him to be not only an effective pitcher during this postseason, but you'd be investing in him to be a pitcher during 2025 and 2026. And is the load management that he's currently getting right now going to lead to an increased risk of injury in 25 and 26, in which case he won't even be pitching that much for the Dodgers? That would be my real question with a Garrett Crochet.
Yeah.
Phenomenal player. Would be super excited if the Dodgers got him. When I point out a lot of concerns that I have with players during these trades, it is because I want the Dodgers to get the best possible player that's going to fix the exact role that the Dodgers have. And I'm going to probably be skeptical of some of these types of trade packages because I want the Dodgers to get the best player. And I want to look at some of the potential risks that there are. And you could determine for Garrett Crochet, you could say the arm talent is too great enough. Let's go out and get him no matter what it takes because that talent level is there. That certainly is a really good argument to have. This is just the other side of it.
If the Dodgers feel like he's better than one of the 3 or 4 starters that they have available for the playoffs, then go freaking do it, man. We're all wanting to win a World Series. We're all frustrated the Dodgers haven't won since 2020. But don't do it just to say, we want to have a left-handed starter because we want a lefty. I wouldn't agree with that. But I do, if the Dodgers feel like he's better than the options they have available, then that's where you have to trust the Dodgers front office, and you should trust them because they make, as far as bringing in talent and evaluating those kind of things, they almost get those things right almost every single time. Hey, we have an outside the box, and this is what makes Dodgers Dogs as part of the Dodgers Daily Network so special, Austin. We have a comment from Sammy Boy Smith that, hey, you only actually have to have one pitcher on the roster, but you only get a maximum of 13. And then Deuce says he would rather go with 12 pitchers on a postseason roster with 14 position players because, and I think what he's saying is because you have things so spread out, do you really need 13 pitchers?
Yeah, I think that is something that some teams have started to go to a little bit, especially during the postseason series. You're going to have some pinch hitters. You're going to be looking for to maximize some of those matchups and try to go with a left-handed hitter versus a right-handed pitcher or vice versa. Do whatever you can to put yourself in the best situation and look at the numbers and take advantage of that. I could absolutely see the Dodgers going to having 14 guys on the bench if they feel like they have 14 hitters that could come up and have good numbers that they could use in optimal situations. And with the number of days off, you're a little bit less concerned. You're obviously not concerned about having 5 pitchers to be in the starting rotation. I also think you're less concerned about some of the wear and tear at some of the pitchers that you have. I think that's also one of the reasons last year, if you look at the postseason, which I know we don't really like to look at last year's postseason, why they decided not to keep a Ryan Yarbrough on the postseason roster, at least for that first round. Nothing to do against Ryan Yarbrough, but at the time he was one of those long inning relievers Turns out they could have utilized a Ryan Yarbrough during that season, but they thought they were going to get some length from some of their starters and provide a little bit of different types of matchups for some of those short inning type relievers to be able to maximize. Really good conversation, and something that we'll have to look at this Dodgers roster, see who is a part of it, and see if there are 14 hitters that we could say, yeah, this guy would be good in this type of situation, or this guy would be good in this type of situation. Could mean that you have to cut down a really good reliever out of the bullpen, and I don't know necessarily know that's something the Dodgers want to do. Good conversation to have. We'll have the conversation as we enter into September-ish timeframe.
Dalton Rushing's way better than Michael Jordan.
Yeah.
You never saw Michael Jordan play baseball?
Do you know what that is? That is a really good point. Yeah. When I said we're not making the comparison of Dalton Rushing and Michael Jordan, I guess, yeah, Dalton Rushing way better than Michael Jordan at the game of baseball. I did watch Space Jam.
Hey, Motley says, don't bring up the Sam Bowie nightmare. That you're not going to think that's funny because, for somebody that remembers that, that is fun. Okay, so we have the Keibert Ruiz deal that the Dodgers traded Keibert Ruiz. If you go back to when I very first started Dodgers Daily, it was called Dodger Poke Report back then. Pokes being Oklahoma State, I was going to cover OSU and the Dodgers all in the same one. I was all for the Keibert Ruiz trade because, I mean, first of all, if you go back to just go look at the game logs, Will Smith was always ahead of Keibert Ruiz on the depth charts. At every single level they moved up. They moved up together at Tulsa. They moved up together at Oklahoma City. And Will Smith was always given priority over Keibert Ruiz. So Will Smith was always, and they were all the same age. They were coming up together. So Keibert Ruiz, he was okay. He was a left-handed hitting catcher that didn't have a whole lot of pop, and his arm wasn't real strong, and the Dodgers had Will Smith. So the fact that he's a platooning catcher right now, if you go back to any of my stuff, back to when he was with Tulsa or Oklahoma City, that's exactly what I said he was going to be, and I am absolutely not surprised whatsoever, and I was totally all for moving Keibert Ruiz. It's called selling high, right? Mm-hmm. And I feel like the Dodgers really sold high on him, and they had the ability to do that. So as far as a Keibert Ruiz comparison to a Dalton Rushing or whatever, I've seen both of them at the exact same stages of their career, and I can tell you which way I came away from watching Keibert Ruiz versus the way I came away with watching Dalton Rushing in person, and it was not close.
Dalton Rushing's a special player, and he's just phenomenal. And we've seen so many points of evidence, and you just watch the daily grind that he has. He's amazing. But speaking of Keibert Ruiz, because he was traded to the Washington Nationals, Dodgers made a trade earlier this week that I don't think we've covered quite yet. Actually, a guy who was formerly part of this system. Dodgers gave up
Jose's back.
Yeah, Dodgers gave up some cash considerations. I know fans are going to be missing cash considerations, but they got Jose Hernandez back, who was left-handed reliever, part of this Dodgers system for quite a while. In the Rule 5 draft after the 2022 season, I believe it was, got picked up by the Pittsburgh Pirates, stayed on their roster for all of 2023, was able to get some great major league experience, played a little bit this season for the Pirates. Didn't seem like he was getting a lot of opportunities for him. They decided to move on from him. Now he is back in this Dodgers system, another fire-throwing left-handed reliever, and I think something that is important for a Jose Hernandez. Still has his minor league options, still has several minor league options, which I think is something that is important for the Dodgers, important for guys that are coming out of the bullpen. He throws heat, he throws gas. You could see for the Dodgers, especially if they go to a six-man rotation, as they look for ways to keep some of these bullpen pieces healthy, you could see guys come up and down like we have seen through the past, and especially as we get a little bit later into the season, you don't have quite as many guys who are those spring training invites. You could see a Jose Hernandez flame-throwing left-handed reliever come out of the bullpen. And as you regroup him with some of the coaches that he was surrounded by before, you could see him do something within this Dodger system. I was very excited to see Jose Hernandez back in this Dodger system. So something that I think I saw, didn't mention it on the last show that I was a part of. Had to make sure that we covered that during the show today.
Dew says if the Dodgers are serious about winning in October, this is a while back. I'm getting back up to the top. We've gotten behind because we've had a lot of stuff to talk about. They will have Rojas and Betts up the middle. We'll see. That's only if Miguel Rojas. If you would have talked to Dodgers fans in August of last year, they would have been the exact opposite of that. And I would say also, I think the fact that Rojas is playing that well is because the Dodgers have defined the exact perfect role for them. Yeah. I do think the Dodgers' first option there is, if it's not Mookie Betts at shortstop, is via trade. I don't care how good Miguel Rojas is playing. Again, I think that is because of the role he has been giving, mainly because of health concerns. He is way less healthy than Dodgers fans realize. You cannot play him every day from the middle of June all the way till the end of the season. So I wouldn't disagree with that, but I do think the Dodgers are going to probe very heavily to see if they can come up with probably a solution at shortstop at some point that actually makes them a better club. And like Austin always says, you're not going to do it just to go make a trade. Roy says, Casey, the numbers get skewed because we are not consistent across the board. We score 13 runs one game and only score 1 run the next 2. Our stats look good, but does not equate to constant winning. Well, I don't disagree, and I complain about the boom or bust offense a lot. I can't stand it, Roy. You know I don't. We're relying too much on home runs where we have a consistent theme. I bitch and moan about that probably more than anything about the Dodgers.
Yeah.
Go
ahead.
Having said that, the Dodgers are 43-28, which is the second best record in the National League, and they've had a grueling, grindy part of their schedule. So I agree with you about the Dodgers being too boom or bust. I don't disagree with any of that, but at some point, facts are facts. The Dodgers are 15 games over 500, and they're in first place in the NL West by 7 games and have the second best record in the National League. So they've actually, I mean, they're having a really good, and they're top 10 in so many different categories, and they have so many different players that are in the top 10. So, and that can't all come from mop-up duty.
Yeah, no, I think there's truth in both sides.
I agree.
We've seen a lot with the Dodgers that they've scored a lot of runs and then not so many good runs a couple of games. And they'll score 20 runs and then they'll score 2 or 3 runs. There's been some inconsistency at the game, which there is going to be inconsistency for even the most consistent clubs at the big league level, because the game of baseball is incredibly hard. So I think there's truth in that. I think there's truth to say, look, even with this offense, which we know that there has been some holes, or there has been some players that have not reached the standard for the Dodgers, reached the standard for what we know that they can be, even though they haven't reached that level. This offense, if you look at the whole big picture, still ranks towards the tops. How much better can this offense be if we find a little bit more consistency, if we upgrade, or these guys that are on the team are able to elevate their game to the standard that we know that they can and that they should be? I think that is more of the clear takeaway that they have. Yes, I want more consistency. Yes, I want this team to go through less stretches, eliminate some of the downward or the slumps that they have. You just hear the players talk about this quite a bit, limiting some of the slumps that they go and trying to prolong some of the high points of their seasons. I think that is something that the Dodgers are working on. I think there's good signs. I think there are some concerning signs, and it's about how do you and what approach do you take towards prolonging the good while limiting some of the bad.
Jerry Hunter, I wouldn't trade for O'Neill or Robert. They're hurt way too much. I know, Austin, you've covered that absolutely to an extent on Monday. You've covered that several different times on different shows. There is some truth to that. Kenny Chung says the only reason, hey, reminder also down the farm coming up, we have Kenny George, we have Ryan Ward, who's leading the PCL in home runs. We have Alex Freeland. We have the great performance by Peter Hubeck. We have the promotion of Jermaine Rosario in his Double-A debut. lots of great stuff coming up on
I'm gonna guess you're not gonna play the ending to the Loons game for last night, because I didn't get much sleep because of the way that game ended.
We'll get to that here in just a minute. I'll let you explain all that.
Yeah.
Okay. So Kenny Chung says the only reason why Barnes is still with the team is because Kershaw. I don't disagree. Well, I kind of do disagree with that. First of all, in 2019, I got to see with my own eyes a rehab start for Clayton Kershaw in Oklahoma City with a young Will Smith who got to catch him that night when he was with AAA Oklahoma City. And I can tell you, Clayton Kershaw came out on record just raving about this young catcher named Will Smith and how great of a job he did calling pitches and how much he trusted Will Smith and how much he liked Will Smith. So I know, not for an opinion, I know for a fact that Clayton Kershaw, since 2019, the very first time he threw to him in a real game, if you consider a minor league game a real game, not a major league game, but a minor league game, Clayton Kershaw has been nothing but absolutely, totally pumped about how great Will Smith is. I think the Clayton Kershaw, Austin Barnes deal is a organic way to find Austin Barnes a role. And I think whenever you evaluate Austin Barnes, the Dodgers evaluate him based on, okay, well, what other backup catchers in the major leagues can provide this team whenever you put everything into the basket, not just production on the field, but everything. What other backup catcher can you go get that's going to play every fifth or sixth day that's actually going to provide more for the Dodgers than Austin Barnes does? I think that's how they evaluate him.
Yeah, and especially with him, look, he's only played 21 games to this point of the season, only has 64 at-bats. I know we talk a lot about some of the struggles that Austin Barnes has had. He doesn't have as critical of a role for this Dodgers team because of the way that Will Smith is playing. You don't need a ton of production from your backup catcher. He has good relationships with a lot of the pitchers. I think the Dodgers feel comfortable with Austin Barnes in the position that he currently is in, and I think they're happy with keeping him under his contract, which does expire after this season. There is a club option. I'm not anticipating the Dodgers picking that up, although we'll have to wait and see what happens. I think they're just happy with the way that Austin Barnes is in the limited role that he has to play. Now, if something happened to Will Smith, could you say, hey, maybe the Dodgers are in a little bit of trouble here?
Great point.
Sure, and that's where you could bring up the point, hey, maybe we do need a better backup catcher as a little bit more of an insurance just in case something happens to Will Smith. However, assuming that everything stays fine, which I totally anticipate that to be the case, I think the Dodgers are in a good position because they have one of, if not the best catcher in the game of baseball in Will Smith.
Totally agree. I mean, when you're talking about why create that mess with Austin Barnes, who is a beloved Dodger. I mean, he's a Dodger for life. Why create that mess? For what? For Austin Wins? Give me another name of a backup catcher.
Yeah, it's they're limited and their availability.
That's going to come in and play every fifth or sixth day. Give me some names.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
Why create that mess with Austin Barnes for that guy? Whatever name you can come up with, why would you create that mess with Austin Barnes for that guy?
And especially if it's going to be a situation where they're not going to see any playing time anyway during the postseason
That's what I'm saying, yeah.
So
absolutely, I just don't see the reason to create that mess. Now, if you were to say, hey, we've had Hunter Fiducia here, and he's hitting 300 again, and he is absolutely just grinded. He's been on the 40-man since last year. We bypassed him for Austin Wins last year. This guy is grinded and deserves a chance at the major league level. We are going to give it to him. Now, that's the only scenario in my mind that it's worth making the mess you'd have to make with Austin Barnes to make him not the backup catcher, would be as if you just said, hey, Austin, listen, we got this young guy that's look at it, man. I mean, this guy has earned being here. This is the way we're going. I think even Austin Barnes might even go, yeah, sucks, but yeah, I get it.
Yeah,
I think that's the only scenario that makes sense to me.
And especially thinking past this season to what the Dodgers are going to do with that backup catcher role, especially Will Smith is going to be the catcher going forward for the next decade for the Dodgers. But if this is the last season for Austin Barnes, and especially if you don't believe that Dalton Rushing, or you want to provide a little bit of positional versatility to Dalton Rushing, hint, I wouldn't do that at the major league level if I were you. The Dodgers, I would start off with a little bit in the minor leagues. perhaps you go ahead and get Hunter Fiducia a little bit of experience. So then he has some communication, has some experience with some of these big league starters. I think that could be the only scenario where the Dodgers move on. If they ID'd a guy like a Hunter Fiducia already on the 40-man roster who they could envision at least for until, let's say, a Dalton Rushing is ready or a Diego Cartaya or whoever the Dodgers have in mind. Or perhaps if they want to give Hunter Fiducia, which they hope they do, a fair evaluation for that catching position. Perhaps they want to see how he does, get him some experience with some big league pitching. Maybe that is the scenario, but then also you could think the Dodgers could do something potentially with the phantom IL stint for a guy like an Austin Barnes if needed, although we'll have to wait and see what happens.
Yeah, we have a comment here from Jerry Hunter. I hope they don't trade Paez. I hear that, and I'm like, for this guy, and that, no, you don't trade Andy Paez. I don't even consider him really. I guess he's probably still considered a prospect. I don't know exactly how, but man, Andy Paez. So I didn't put him on the untouchables just because he's in the major leagues right now. I don't consider him a prospect, but I mean. He's the best hitting. Well, I guess if you look, you can make the case between him and Tio. Tio has a little bit higher underlying metrics in certain areas, but there are certain areas to where Andy Paez is the best hitting outfielder you have on this team. He's hitting over 270. He's been clutch. He's been good. He's been all those sorts of things. Just think if Andy Paez was a 6-year veteran having the exact same year that he's having right now, but yet he had major league experience. Well, what would he bring in a trade scenario there?
Yeah, no, those are really good questions. I think the Dodgers are happy with what Andy Paez is able to provide, which does not come without some rookie mistakes, rookie frustrations. I know a lot of Dodgers fans were frustrated, particularly with a couple of slides that Andy Paez has done or some base running decisions. Those are some rookie mistakes. I expect and hope that those base running mistakes will be fixed. But you're just seeing at the offensive side of the plate during the month of June, which already we're at June 15th. So you have a good week and a half, 2 weeks worth of games to evaluate. 200 WRC plus. And that's coming after a May where he did struggle a little bit going after his ascension coming off in early April during that first part of the season. He's starting to walk more. He's providing a little bit more consistent at-bats. He's starting to adjust to the adjustments that big league pitchers have given on him. He is a very good young player for this Dodgers team, and for an organization that has superstar players where you need young players to help go ahead and reinforce your team. I think Andy Paez is a star in the making. Still got a lot of things that he's got to work on to become the best type of player. Still has to walk a little bit more, although in the month of June, 14.6 walk percentage.
Yeah.
He's walking more. He's striking out to only less than 21% of the time. He's becoming more and more of the type of player that you saw at the minor league level during the month of June and just hitting more and more better. 114 WRC plus to the start of the season. He absolutely has a clear role for this Dodgers team right now. I'm glad the Dodgers are giving him everyday reps. They see the level of talent that he has, and they are trying to allow him to reach his potential. And that is something that very few Dodgers prospects get, but Andy Paez is getting that opportunity.
The merit system isn't just, hey, what are your stats? Because, first of all, whenever you look at stats, like Austin and I could take stats, and Austin will have a certain set of metrics, and I'll have an entirely different set. So it's based on, okay, what set of metrics matter the most to you? So statistics can be, kind of like we were talking about the misleading statistics of the Dodgers, having all these top 10 guys and being top 10, all these, it can be misleading because they might score 15 in one game and 2 of the next based on, hey, are you more heavy on the slug or are you more heavy on the basketball? Whatever it may be. So statistics can be whatever you want to make them be. So when you say merit system, I think Austin Barnes, I think he passes the merit test because he works with all these young guys. He is a great defensive catcher in terms of receiving. He is, whenever you have a Gavin Stone and he's able to go sit down on the bench and run things through a guy like Austin Barnes, I can tell you for a fact that matters, and that matters a lot to a young guy like Gavin Stone. So I think whenever you put all the things that Austin Barnes still does for this organization that don't necessarily go into a stat sheet, I think he does qualify in the merit system. I personally do.
There's a lot of things that we still can't quantify on the baseball field. I think Austin Barnes excels at those characteristics. Otherwise, the Dodgers would not have a place for him.
Could Alex Freeland be the shortstop in 25? I definitely agree that he could be. I think he's really good. I'm just really high on Alex Freeland. Hey, we're going to get down the farm here in just a segment. Again, we have Alex Freeland on the docket. We have Ryan Ward. We have the Maytag Jack Dreyer. We have the Double-A debut of Jermaine Rosario. We've got Peter Hubeck. We have got Kenny George on the docket for the Down on the Farm. So final thoughts here, Austin, before we get to the Down on the Farm.
Well, I'll just reemphasize this one more time because the question was mentioned about Alex Freeland, which you will see coming up. Still leads all of minor league baseball in rated runs above average, which is one of the important parts in WRC plus. Still hitting absolutely phenomenal. We'll have to wait and see when he does. He is an absolutely meteoric. He's one of these players that is on a meteoric rise in this system and is going to get a lot of buzz. Is going to start to be and should start to be on a lot of these prospect lists because he deserves it, whatever you think about the prospect list. And I think you're seeing a lot of different players stepping up their games, elevating their games, as you're going to see on this Down on the Farm segment. A lot of great players and a lot of great performances coming out of this Dodgers system. It is great to see. Great conversations are always had. It is absolutely pleasure to join you, Casey, and all of the people that help make these conversations.
We don't hold back.
Yeah, it's all of you guys that help make these conversations actually happen and take forward. So I hope you stick around, pay attention to the Down on the Farm segment, because every single player plays an important role in the system, whether they are the top guys in this system or whether they are a little bit more, they aren't noticed a lot. We want to make sure that those performances are rewarded, that those performances are highlighted, because those guys can turn into something and be important pieces for the Dodgers to help put this puzzle together. You don't want to just pay attention to the major league system, because the minor league system, whether you call these guys up and have them turn into an Andy Pages or a Gavin Stone, or whether you trade these guys like a Keibert Ruiz was traded to get important pieces to help your team win playoff games, every single part of your organization, every single part of your system matters and is important. And I think there's a lot of exciting action and a lot of exciting guys down at the farm system that are going to help this Dodgers club one way or another.
Totally agree. We've been talking using the buzzword merit system all day long, right? The way that we do our prospect coverage, this is why we cover the top 30 prospects. We like them because they give coverage, but we are more geared towards the merit system. Doesn't matter who you are, doesn't matter what your name is, doesn't matter where you're ranked. If you deserve it, if you have passed the merit test, you get the coverage the same way as everybody else. So we pride ourselves on giving prospect coverage that way here at Dodgers Dogs as part of the Dodgers Daily Network. So with that, Austin, I want to thank you so much for joining today. You're welcome to stick around, and I'd actually pre-recorded this Down on the Farm. Hopefully everybody sticks around and watches this, because we have a great Down on the Farm segment for you. I want to thank everybody out there for tuning in to our LA segment of our Dodgers Dogs show today, and make sure and stick around. So let's not waste any more time. Let's get right to it, and let's take a trip down the farm. As we do each and every time we take a trip down on the farm, we're going to start today's Down the Farm segment with Rancho Cucamonga, and that is Kendall George. Now watch this, just a fairly routine ground ball to shortstop, double clutch. If you double clutch, he's got time to go to the concession stand, sign some autographs, and long since be past first base. He puts so much pressure on the defense. I love it. Modern day guys will say, hey, professionals aren't going to make mistakes. You can't play a game like that because you can't rely on professional defenders to make mistakes like that. Well, hey, I'll tell you what, man, putting pressure on a defense like that with that kind of speed, I don't care how great the defenders are. When you make human beings have to be perfect, they can't always be perfect. And then how about that 17 hopper up the middle for Kendall George? That was really nice as well. So, hey, really love this guy's game. He brings a lot of elements to it that I think the Dodgers need in terms of being able to get on base, put pressure on the defense, be a table setter, steal some bases. So love the game of Kendall George. He had 2 hits last night again. So great job. I love putting pressure on the defense. That's something that Kendall George does a lot. Attaboy definitely goes to Peter Hubeck. That is a fastball right there at 94 miles an hour. And he threw his fastball almost exclusively. You see the slider there that he developed early last year, really mastering the slider. He'll throw a really good one like that. Didn't want to get away from every now and then, but the slider is very good. But that 93, 94, hey, which isn't like the 100 miles an hour that we're used to nowadays. Very good velo for a starter, but 93, 94, that's something that guys see almost every day, and it's getting and beating barrels, although he was throwing it a lot early in the game. And then look at that gigantic breaking ball. I've always said about Peter Hubeck, that spike curveball that he throws is a right-handed version of that Clayton Kershaw curveball. But my point with Peter Hubeck is, why is that 93, 94 beating barrels? I would have to say I've never seen the TrackMan data on him. He has to have great backspin on that ball. That ball has to have good carry, which makes it, the more carry you have, kind of like putting backspin on a ball that you hit, it means the ball goes further. So if the ball goes further, that means it's going to keep its velo longer, which makes it gives a lot faster perceived velocity to a hitter. You can see right there, it is getting past barrels. So I cannot wait to see the spin rate on Peter Hubeck's fastball. Young man out of the Baltimore area, Gilman High School, who played, look at that huge curveball again, played for Larry Sheets at Gilman High. Also, as he is growing up, Cal Ripken Jr. was one of the coaches in that program with his dad as an assistant as well, so grew up around really great high-level baseball. A guy kind of like Peyton Martin, who, when he came into the system, his goal was to get to 190 plus, and stay there as far as weight. He hopes to sit around 94 to 96, and you're seeing right here, he's already 93, 94. So he is well on his way, Peter Hubeck. Jason Cabrera was throwing 98-mile-an-hour darts right here. Wow, that's a nice little pitch. That one there is 95, but he did hit 98 last night, and he was very, very impressive, throwing 2 scoreless innings against the Dayton Dragons in front of a packed crowd. It's a really heated rival, the Loons and the Dayton Dragons, ever since the Loons made up that 8.5 game lead a couple of years ago at Dayton, which puts on that crowd right there. That's how Dayton does it every single night. So 2 innings pitch for Jason Cabrera, who just got promoted recently up to Great Lakes. 1 hit, no runs, no strikeouts, and just 1 walk. Cabrera again hitting 98 drop, and that slider right there kind of backed up. You can see that right-handed hitter is like, wow, that was a weird-looking action. So the fastball to the top of the zone was good. The carry to the bottom of the zone was good. Had a good tight slider that he was throwing last night. Threw some pretty good hammers with that slider. ERA down to 2.13, 2.13 for Jason Cabrera. Watch that first base bag, man. Want to show you this home run from Jake Geloff. Now, the significance here is if you subscribe to Perry Hudson or a lot of other major league coaches, hitting instructors, what they'll tell you is, at any level really, but especially the major leagues, only about 5% of the time is a major league hitter going to have everything go perfect for them, meaning having perfect timing, the plane of their swing perfectly matches the plane of the pitch. That's only going to happen about 5 times a year, right? Okay, so the question for a hitter, the determining factor for a hitter, I should say, is not going to be how they hit when everything goes right, because it's not going to happen very often. The real determining factor whether a guy's going to be able to hit and sustain success at the major league level is the type of quality contact they make when things aren't perfect, when your timing's not perfect, when the plane of your bat angle or the plane of your swing doesn't exactly match the plane of the pitch. How are you going to hit then? Well, you saw right there, Jake Geloff squarely early on that pitch, and he still was able to take a pitch that is down and away and pull the ball over the left field wall. So very impressive. That's one thing that I think that I wanted to highlight with Jake Geloff, is that he could be a very good hitter when things don't go perfect, and that is a very telling sign for sustained success at a professional level, or any level for that matter. A little bit of a slow start as he made a jump up to to the high level. That happens. Midwest League, a lot of times you get up there in the north and it's a little bit cooler and that type of thing. It does take some guys a minute or two to get adjusted, but Jake Geloff getting comfortable, and this was a very impressive home run. Hey, how about Jermaine Rosario and his Double-A debut? Nice little tight slider. We always talk about Jermaine has really nasty stuff, really good stuff, but it's always that it's kind of like you might end up in Alaska one pitch and strike out the side the next. The next says a sequence of pitches. How about he started his Double-A debut yesterday? First hitter got a double, next hitter walked, and then he absolutely settled in and started mowing down the Arkansas Travelers. No doubt about that. In his Double-A debut, Jermaine Rosario, 4 2/3 innings pitched, 2 hits, no runs, 5 strikeouts, and 4 walks. We talk about the mound presence all the time with him. He was very, very impressive last night. Fastball was mid-90s, so that those high-riding fastballs are mid-90s. The changeup tumbled, slider was tight, but the thing that was the most impressive to me was his poise and his presence on the mound. So when things didn't always go right, how do you handle yourself then? That's when he was at his best last night, and that's really the type of growth that you're looking for when a guy like Jermaine Rosario, that you know has good stuff. Is his mound presence good? Is his poise good? Is he going to be able to make it through those crunch times as far as a mentality goes and a poise, as far as his poise goes? How will it be in the biggest moments? Jermaine Rosario is really growing up right in front of our eyes. As a matter of fact, one of the play-by-play guys for Double-A Tulsa, Bruce Howard, who is a legend. He's also the play-by-play voice for the University of Tulsa, and then alongside Dennis Higgins for Tulsa, actually even mentioned how poised and how good of a presence that Jermaine Rosario had last night. So we know the stuff is big. The poise is growing up right in front of our eyes, and it was very impressive last night for Jermaine Rosario. Alex Freeland had 3 hits last night. Hey, it had been a little bit of a rough patch for him at the beginning of June, but he's still hitting well over 300. What I really like about him, too, lots and lots of pull side power, no doubt about it, for him, as we're going to see with his home run here in just a second. But then if you look at his oppo and center percentages, they're about the same, which means just like FreddieFreeman, he has that pull side power to hit home runs with right there. Hey, this is also Caden Polkovich going back against the wall. He has a beat on it, thinks they're going to catch, oh man, then just runs right into the wall. Young man who played all of his college baseball at Oklahoma State University, got to see every one of his at-bats out of a local area. Actually coached against him when he was at Edmond Deer Creek, and they absolutely kicked our ass whenever we played him. He was really, really good. So I wanted to kind of point that out. But hey, pull side power for the home runs, and then the oppo and center percentages are almost the exact same. So you gather all of your hits, your doubles, and your base hits, and all of them to the big part of the field, to the opposite side of the field. Then you hit all your home runs to the pull side. Very similar setup to FreddieFreeman. Alex Freeland, very, very talented. 306 on the year, OPS 993. ISO, we always talk about the ISO and K percentages. If they're equal, that means that you have a really good trade-off between power and striking out. Well, how about this? Alex Freeland's ISO is 30 points higher than his strikeout percentage. That means that his power is way, way outlapping the strikeout percentage that he has, and that is great, and that's below 20%. He has posted a WRC plus of 157. Lots of pull power. Then, like we said, sprays out the hits between the big part of the field and oppo, and his power numbers are outlapping his strikeout numbers. Nothing not to like about Alex Freeland, the switch hitting shortstop prospect. Wardo, Ryan Ward, how about right there? 2 home runs last night. As a matter of fact, he had home runs 17 and 18. The second one, home run 18, actually gave him the lead in the PCL again over his teammate Andre Lipsius. Ward has had a tremendous offensive year. Hey, we talked about just a second ago, as a matter of fact, about Alex Freeland. When your ISO is higher than your K percentage, that is very good. How about this? Ryan Ward's ISO is 397. That is 13 points higher than his K percentage. His WRC plus, one reason I really like WRC plus, the Dodgers do as well, is it compares you against your peers, and it puts all the elements together when it does that. So when you're talking about the PCL that has high elevation type of scenario settings like Albuquerque and Reno and Las Vegas and places like that where the ball carries, fine. If you don't want to look at overall numbers and home runs and that kind of thing, I understand that because they can get inflated by those high elevation cities. But whenever you take WRC Plus, it puts all of those elevations into account, all the different ballparks, and it compares you against your peers. And 100 is average. Ryan Ward, 131. That means he is 31% better than all of the other hitters or the average hitter in the PCL compared to his peers, which takes all of the elevations into account. So that's why I really like that WRC Plus number. OPS 1060 for Ryan Ward, a slugging percentage of 678, and his batting average is really good, 282 for Ryan Ward. So old Wardo continues to stroke. He is absolutely killing it, just waiting on major league opportunity. Speaking of waiting on major league opportunity, that would squarely be Hunter Fiducia. Man, I have so much respect for this dude. As the season goes on, you would think as a catcher you wear down. There's been a lot of situations to where his offense actually has gotten better the longer the season has gone on, which means he is super, super durable. Young man out of Lake Charles, Louisiana, went to Barb High School, went to LSU Eunice out of high school, and finished his last season of college with the Bayou Bengals there in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, with the LSU Tigers. This young man, Hunter Fiducia, has done nothing but hit and hit and hit. Still a little bit miffed that last year the Dodgers bypassed him for Austin Wins whenever they had the opportunity to bring Hunter Fiducia up. Could have brought Hunter Fiducia up, given him his major league experience, DFA'd him, and made a trade for him to another organization that would have given him opportunity. Here we are a little over a year later. Hunter Fiducia still stuck in AAA, still hitting, but hey, man, all you can do is can control what you can control. That's something that Hunter Fiducia definitely is doing. He has a walk percentage of 13.7 and a strikeout percentage below 20, and it's ISO. We've talked about that now. This is the third time on this show. His ISO, just like Ryan Ward, just like Alex Freeland, is higher than his strikeout percentage. How is he compared against his peers in the PCL? How about a 124 WRC plus, 24% better than the average hitter in the PCL. So not much more Hunter Fiducia can do, just continue to control what he can control and wait for opportunity. My man, Jack Dreyer, the Maytag. This dude is really good. He threw 2 innings scoreless last night for Oklahoma City, lowered his ERA to 0.98, whip 0.72. Hey, we talked about all the different injuries at Iowa once he was there, after his first year there, and then 2020, then the injuries after that. Last year finally got ramped back up and just splashed onto the scene. And when I had a chance to talk to him, he said, hey, he thinks he can sit around 94 to 96. He's at about 94 right now, so he's getting very close to that. How about 38 strikeouts in 27.2 innings? And the Maytag has not allowed an earned run in his last 7 outings. In those 7 outings, he has 14 strikeouts, just one walk. Just one walk and 14 strikeouts in his last 7 outings. This dude, Jack Dreyer, the Maytag, put him at the front of a Rolodex because he is really good.